All right, I believe next we had Chrissy. Chrissy has a question on spiritual balancing. She must be on module 8.
I've actually finished module 8,
Okay,
sadly. I'm sadly
congratulations.
done. Well, thank you. But I'm looking forward to repeating the entire course in due time. So my question about spiritual balancing, I hear the word triggered. It's when we're triggered by an emotion is when we need to balance it. I'm just wondering, can we do it when we're not being triggered, or does it require that catalyst of being really angered, and that obviously applies to all negative emotions. And I was wondering if you could give an example using an emotion other than anger, because that one's really easy to do,
Right.
but I'm just feeling kind of stuck with how to do it, because I know how important it is and I really want to work on that more.
Right. Say is that you're really either in awareness or in ignorance. So you're either
Okay.
being aware of the emotion or your ignorance of the true nature of the emotion being something other than you. Module
Okay.
1, uh, whatever appears is not me, right? So if that's
Mm-hmm.
not the immediate relationship to the emotion, we call that a trigger. You've realized it, you've claimed it, you've identified with it. You've said, oh, this is my sadness. Why? Because there's a story attached.
Mm-hmm.
This thing happened, that person betrayed me, and now when I think of them, I'm so hurt and sad. So you're claiming that emotion is my own. And so that's where spiritual balancing is necessary. Now,
Okay.
if you have achieved a place of self-realization where you understand and know yourself as pure awareness, the I am, then the emotion might appear and you recognize it immediately as just appearing on behalf of the person, the old belief system, the old story that I don't have any interest in and I don't believe it anymore. Nevertheless, there's still some juice in the tank. There's still some gasoline in the tank. So the person's still running while it burns itself out of fuel. So we'll watch the person get triggered by circumstances, but now we're standing
Mm-hmm.
back at a much deeper place of awareness, right? So we're not claiming
Mm-hmm.
it as my sadness. So there's actually no suffering there. And this is
Okay.
it's a very finely tuned state of consciousness when you kind of get to this place, because it'll almost surprise you that you can actually do both. Like, I guess you asked for an example. A really great example that probably everyone here can relate to is loneliness.
Mm.
Loneliness was always my biggest kind of demon to overcome. And I worked on it till I got to this place where that loneliness would get triggered every so often. But there was the immediate recognition that that's not my loneliness. It's an old
Mm-hmm.
belief system. And so the loneliness was there, the sort of emotional pain was there, but there was such a clear recognition that it's not me that actually both were happening at the same time. And there really was that disconnect of the observer and the observed, rather than when we're identified, there's just, I am this loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
To get to that place is when you are triggered, we do the practice of spiritual balancing, what we talk about in module 8. And that
Mm-hmm.
is to really just give us enough experience doing that we begin to see the illusion of that loneliness. And it stops appearing on
Okay.
behalf of me. And you start saying, oh, yeah, it's an old story singing its old song, trying to get my attention. It's an
Mm-hmm.
old belief that's slowly dying out and it's trying to get my attention. Don't let me die. Please believe in me. Come on, identify with me. So
Right.
you just remain as I am and love it, let it be what it is, and don't infringe on it by claiming it. And slowly it just kind of evaporates out of your reality.
Okay, so in Modulate, when you're using the example that Ra gives on how to do spiritual balancing, that is that used when you really like you get really triggered and you get really angry and you want to make the emotion really as big as you can and then do the reverse emotion? Because I'm already
Mhm.
doing what you're saying. Like I'm catching myself all the time. Like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not lonely. I'm never alone. And so I
Yeah.
don't need to balance that if I'm aware of it.
Yes.
But if I get really, upset or angry, that's when I need to do the balancing, the
Yeah. The
process
relation.
that Ra gives. Sorry.
The relationship you'll have to it, and sorry, Jimmy, I kept you in the waiting room for like 5 minutes, I think. um, the relationship that you will have to the emotion will be very different. And I think if I had to put it in words, I would say that there's such a level of disinterest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine like if you've watched the same TV episode like 20 times, you've seen this episode 20 times, and it just keeps
Mm-hmm.
appearing on the TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you get so sick of it that you're just like, oh, there it is again. Almost like you kind of roll your eyes at it. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually it just, you don't even react to it. It's just whatever to you. It's kind of the
Okay.
relationship you'll develop with an emotion. So if that's not the relationship, then don't convince yourself, oh, I'm aware of that, so I need to balance, right? That would be bypassing. You want to be honest with yourself and say, wow, a lot of me is still really grabbing onto that thing. So let me balance
Mm-hmm.
this. And what Ra
Okay.
explains is that sort of practice of turning up that emotion to its most
Mm-hmm.
ludicrous extent. Like, I'm so lonely, I should just throw myself off a building, right? And you'll kind of go, yeah,
Right.
that's a little over the top. But that's ego. That's how ego is, right? It doesn't have any
Mm-hmm.
rational perspective on things. It just goes. It just wants you to
Right.
identify. So you do that to, one, see the folly of that emotion, like to see where it will lead you if you keep going that way. Look, okay, I don't want to walk down that dark alley with that person. That doesn't look safe. And then the
Mm-hmm.
next thing you do is you bring to mind in your imagination, literally, imagine what it would be like if you were totally at peace being alone. If you were just glowing in my house with so much internal love, so much connection with the divine. What would that be like? You just literally imagine it. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, I shared this last week, but there's a passage in Be As You Are. Ramana Maharshi actually defines meditation as imagining oneself to be the supreme being. Like, if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel real yet, then just imagine it. And as we know,
Mm-hmm.
Neville Goddard and stuff teach, your imagination creates reality. So in that act of spiritual balancing, you're imagining what it would be like if you were a totally crystallized being, right? And
Okay.
Ra talks about this in the Law of One. They asked them, what does a balanced entity do when they're confronted with a tumultuous circumstance? Do they feel the anger and then they balance it and then they're good? And Ra's like, nope, to the balanced entity, there is no reaction.
Right.
Oh, that's some next level shit, right? So that's what's available
Funny.
to us. We don't have to suffer from our emotions. And that's important for us to
Mm-hmm.
know, so we see where the end goal is. The end goal isn't to just
Okay.
get really good at balancing, right?
Okay. Right.
The end goal is to equalize myself so that my relationship to life has no more insanity, right? A
Okay.
perfectly sane perception of reality. That's what the Course in Miracles calls the vision of Christ. Everything is seen with
Okay.
love.
Okay. I think Patty has a question about imagination, so I'm not going to ask you about that. Well, I think Patty's on the call today, so I'm looking forward to that. You
Okay, cool. If she
answering that
doesn't, you can
question.
come back on.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chrissy.
it.
Likewise.